All right. Good evening, everybody. It's Nate G here, along with Dr. Doug Lisle. Dr. Lisle, how are you doing this fine evening?
Good. All is well.
Excellent. Well, I'm a little bit bummed because yesterday one of my hockey teams, the Los Angeles Kings, got swept by the very first year that the Las Vegas Golden Knights have been in season. So it's always a little bit disappointing, but I wish them all the best. And tonight, hopefully the Ducks don't get swept also. So we're just a little bit of a bummer here for Southern California. But you're in Northern California, so the San Jose Sharks, you might be rooting for them, I think.
The Who?
No, the Who is a band in the 80s.
All's fair. I'm kind of a basketball fan, but hey, no offense to the hockey people. No.
All right. Well, we got a couple of questions today. Fear of commitment question, evolutionary psychology, professors, evolutionary psychology of advertisements and music and media. And then if we can get to it, why do people love music? A little bit earlier this week, a good friend of mine that I've known for a long time, we got in a little bit of a vicious cycle, which happens from time to time. And really funny, I was thinking about it the day after, and I thought, this is not worth it to continue it. So I decided to use your technique of flooding the circuits. So I called them up and, I practiced the anecdote and attribute, anecdote. I got 2-3 of them. And I did my little thing, and there was silence on the other line. And then my friend goes, "Good. I'm glad you finally recognized it."
I love that. That's just beautiful.
It worked.
Oh, there you go.
Had to laugh internally. So,
yeah. Excellent.
Worked beautifully, Dr. Lisle. All right. Let's keep going with the questions. Enough of my personal drama. Dear Dr. Lisle, I have a friend who's sleeping with a beautiful, smart, and nice woman. He said he thinks she is more attractive than he is when I asked him. However, he says he has a fear of commitment. What is this fear of commitment that men often have? Is it simply typical of men who lean towards casual mating, no matter how good the deal is?
By no means necessarily. Let's remember that as evolutionary psychology has been like a white-hot laser through the social sciences in helping us understand human nature, obviously from a completely novel and, for the first time, scientifically grounded perspective. And in the case of beauty and dynamics in relationships, it's been obviously the first and only explicable viewpoint as to why it is that beauty is so important, and the objectivity of beauty and its importance. However, looks aren't everything. Okay, so let's keep in mind that.
Luckily for me.
So keep in mind that even though this guy may have what he considers a screaming deal in the looks department, there's a lot more to a committed relationship than that. So a committed relationship, if a male is going to be essentially in a position psychologically where he is figuring on provisioning, and again, just to make clear, it isn't that anybody's planning on having children. It's the concept that the relationship has that tone to it, that it's activating the neural circuits that were built in Stone Age environments that evolved in those circumstances where females were looking for males who would stick around and provision offspring, and males were willing to do so under conditions where they felt like this was an excellent deal for them. A huge card in the deck is the differential between the male's attractiveness and the female's attractiveness. So in this case, but it is not the only card in the deck. So let's keep in mind, I tend to say that there are 3 major variables that are considered in analyzing any committed deal, which is looks, brains, and personality. However, we could say that in principle there's a 4th set as well that we could call circumstances. Does she have 6 kids? Does she have a crazy ex? Et cetera. Also, you have to understand that everybody's circumstances are viewed somewhat differently with respect to what a long-term committed relationship might mean. What's the what are the financial considerations? What are the other person's expectations? Men in particular have to be thinking about judges and jobs and 401ks and et cetera, et cetera. So there's a tremendous amount to consider, and these are all factors, and particularly in the modern environment, given the fact that, quote, committed relationships are meaning that people are, in principle, trying to make extremely long-term decisions. So the modern environment and the way we have our whole socioeconomic status, set up is that we're looking at provisioning children not for 2 or 3 or 4 years that might have been critical and important for females to be selecting mates for in the Stone Age. But we're talking about provision in, heck, I call it 25 to life. It's a 25 to life sentence, okay? So any male in his right mind would have a lot of pause about commitment. And so this doesn't make them having a, quote, some kind of, you should have a very healthy fear of commitment. So the notion that this fear of commitment is somehow some weakness or some foible or some lack of maturity or lack of guts or just some little personality variable of importance. Actually, it is completely reasonable and sensible. And so anyway, so the bottom line is this guy, just because he's got a good deal in terms of the looks situation and her personality is tolerable and her intelligence is tolerable, doesn't mean that as he computes all these things together, that he's coming up with something that is, and he looks at against the context dependent upon his level of conscientiousness. So remember, a male that is lower in conscientiousness is a heck of a lot more likely to commit, for God's sakes. In other words, he's in. Yeah, for what? Well, until he's not. Okay. Whereas somebody that is more highly conscientious, it's going to give them pause to look in some girl's eyes and tell her, swear up and down that he's there forever. So, yeah, this is, I don't know what else to be said about this. Looks are not everything. They're not even close to everything. Are they important? You bet they are. But they're not going to be the deciding factor of any male who's actually, thinking through what this all could mean for him.
Fantastic. Yeah, I've often wondered if the commitment chip is something that grows over time as you get to know the girl longer. Just like with girls, when they evaluate the man's personality, it kind of takes a couple of dates and a couple of interactions to come.
I think that's a very, God, I just have to hear myself talk. I should just let you talk. That's a very good point in that I think that's beautifully said. In other words, just as the females needs to be understanding who the male is and what it's going to mean for provisioning for her, and therefore slowly integrates that into her evaluation of the male. The same is going to be true for the male as he considers that provisioning. It's like, well, what is this provisioning going to mean? There's huge variables as to what it is that could mean for him, depending upon the personality of this girl. Is she going to be, crashing cars, torching other people's houses? And when he looks at some girl, like, who knows what the costs are and benefits are going to be long term? Well, he also is going to require the same kind of vetting. And so they're going to go through a mutual dance as they get to know each other. And how that dance is playing out is going to be ultra important in considering how his commitment chip, fires or doesn't fire.
Fantastic. All right. Well, during your answer, we got 2 more callers in, so we'll just take all these 3 callers as best as we can. Our first caller is from Seattle. Andrew, welcome to the program. Thanks for calling.
Thank you, Nate. Thank you, Doug.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. I'm a high school teacher, and I've got questions about the 15-year-old male mind.
Okay.
I've observed, and my colleagues have observed, how attached they are to the games, to the video games, the games on their phones.
Right.
They're literally walking down the hallway, and they have what we call head-on collisions, where they just bump right into each other because they're looking at their phones playing these video games. And then they go home, and it's incredibly addicting, shockingly how much it taps into them. And they play these online games where they sort of enter this room. They break up into teams, and they have to work together to play some variation of capture the flag. And, of course, the language and the communication gets really raw and nasty because they're not looking at each other. It's all virtual.
Yeah.
And then, they tend to snap out of it by the time they're a junior or senior because, there's girls and they want to get careers. But I do know of one extreme case where this young man got so addicted, he wound up graduating number 2 in his school, and then his parents divorced, and then his father tragically died. He inherited a bunch of money, went on to college, and played nothing but video games, lost his scholarship, and then 4 or 5 years later, all his friends are going on, getting married, and advancing careers, and he never finished college and just basically spent all his inheritance and had nothing.
Yeah. So your question is that
how does evolutionary psychology relate to that 15-year-old male mind?
Yeah. Well, what's going on is that the content of the games is beautifully matched to the content area problems that the male mind was built for, which was, basically resource management in warfare and hunting. So that's pretty much what that mind is built for, and that's pretty much what that mind is interested in. So, 50 years ago, it was young men looking at baseball cards, memorizing statistics, and trading baseball cards, et cetera, and then being the guy who knew who had the longest hitting streak and the second longest hitting streak and all that sort of thing. So it's the same essentially informational content. What's happened now is that with the video capabilities now and the programming capabilities, what's happened is that we've now turned that into a supernormal stimulus. So now the mind can get closer to a feel of the success in hunting and warfare, obviously with nothing other than just moving their wrists. So this is what it is, and it's not going anywhere. In other words, it's just going to get more sophisticated, and pretty soon we're going to have the Star Trek holodeck where you're going to have a three-dimensional version of this thing. I mean, that's absolutely coming. Incidentally, that will probably revolutionize human sexuality before too long. So that's kind of where this is going. Now, what will snap people out of it usually, which sounds like this young man's headed this way, is that he's going to be broke. And so broke, no career, no way to get a job, friends have moved on. Suddenly, now the best thing that could ever happen to him was to lose all his money. So now he's going to actually have to face the actual constraints that are put on animals, which is poverty and hunger. And so then things will start to iron themselves out. So this is the problem with inherited wealth and having things too easy, is that one way or another, this is just a version of the pleasure trap. And evolutionary biology is sitting right inside the pleasure trap. In other words, that's what it is. The pleasure trap is when we alter the modern environment in such a way that we make the stimuli, we process the stimulation in a way that is beyond what could have been ever achieved in the Stone Age environment where the neural circuits for those values evolved. So, you can trap it with drugs, you can trap it with pornography, you can trap it with warfare and resource acquisition, virtual actions, virtual feedback. You can trap it with music. A lot of ways to trap it, and certainly food is a monster in this domain. So, It's just another drug, and it won't get. It's only going to get so many of them for so long, and this isn't heroin, thank goodness, but it can occasionally grab a life and not let it go. So, very good call, thank you, and I'm sure you get to see an awful lot of this being a high school teacher, I'm sure.
Andrew, thank you very much for the phone call.
Thank you both.
You bet.
Thank you, Andrew, very much for the call. All right, our next caller. Caller, what's your name and where are you calling from?
It's Philip, and I'm calling from the Seattle area.
Very good. All right.
Another Seattleite. Excellent.
Philip, you're the guy he was talking about. just kidding you. All right, go right ahead, Philip. What's up?
Hey, I've been I'm kind of a newcomer to evolutionary psychology, but it's real fascinating, and I'm finding a behavior within a specific group puzzling, and I was hoping you could, if you could, expand on it a little bit. So you spent most of my life playing hockey, and it was very similar to most people in the room until age and deterioration of skills has kind of gotten the better of me. So I'm kind of getting my fix now with competitive pinball, which, believe it or not, is a real big thing in the Pacific Northwest. So that gives me my competition fix. Yeah. Anyway, the group that's attracted to pinball it's a lot different than the group that played hockey. This is a mostly middle-aged crowd. There's how do I say this? There's some social ineptitudes and some cues that they're very intelligent. They're very creative. They're a really smart group, but just a little socially awkward, I guess you could put it. Not a lot of them have great careers, and I'd say most of them aren't in real romantic relationships. I'm kind of getting the idea that a lot of them don't want to be. Mm-hmm. And of course, it's male-dominated, probably to a clip of about 90%. Anyway, so what's happened recently is my wife and I are trying to have a baby, and that's kind of been a part of a discussion with the local tournament and my Monday night team. And the reaction that I've received, kind of surprisingly, and there hasn't seemed to be any kind of exception, is how the dreadful thought that they have of having children and how that would impact their lives so negatively. And it's so consistent amongst everybody, and their passion coming from their voice that this would be a terrible thing if that ever happened to them. And so I've been engaging them a little more as the discussion's gone on. I'm like, is there no scenario you can find where this is going to give you purpose and meaning? And no, they kind of affirm that children would ruin their lives. And I'm wondering if you, based on what I've described, do you have any insight on why that's kind of the case? Why these pinball geeks, I guess for lack of a better word, just fret at the thought of having children.
No, it's great. I mean, this is a great question, and sometimes when we try to answer things, you're likely dealing with a fairly small sample of people. So you're probably talking about a dozen.
A dozen definitely that I speak to closely, but I'm probably more of a collection of 25. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and it is. This sounds. I don't even know what sport this is. Describe it to me a little bit.
Oh, pinball.
Yeah.
It's so this is kind of an antiquated game. It's been around since the 50s, but you plunge a ball into a playing surface where there's lots of lights and targets to hit, and you use two individual flippers to send the ball.
Oh, no. I know what that is. I know I thought. Okay, so this is truly, i.e., the pinball wizard. All right. So this is a very people that are going to be really into pinball. This is not a random sample of people.
No.
Okay.
This is these are it's right. The most competitive of the people around here. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Yes.
Right. Yeah, this is going to be. These are some odd ducks personality-wise, and so it doesn't particularly surprise me that this would be. That something like this would be found. Not necessarily the most normal people when it comes to connecting with others and finding a lot of value in those kind of connections. Obviously, if you can sit there and play pinball for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours by yourself, this isn't this is a somewhat unusual personality type. So, and that's where one would put their resources and energy and so on and so forth. So, yeah, I think you've got an odd sample of individuals that are not human relationship typical, and as a result, it's actually interesting that they, there's a similar. I've had a similar feedback over my career that I have gotten very interesting feedback about what it is that I do for a living. So I will have people say, "Oh my God, I can't believe, poor you, what you do. You have to talk to these people." It's like, it's hilarious. Okay. Like, to me, there's really nothing more interesting when I have people that I'm going to be talking to. It's like, I wonder what the problems are going to be with this one. It's like Christmas. It's like, I'm opening up a package, and the messier it is, the more interesting it gets. And really, it's not even. And obviously, when you're a young clinician and some lady starts crying in the 8 minutes into the session, and people are watching you behind the glass, you're like, oh my God, I'm doing terrible, and now what am I supposed to do? And I'm supposed to act like I know what I'm doing, and but this is a bad session. It's a bad session. So, I mean, there's a learning curve where you have to learn about a lot of things. But then at this point in the game, it's like, oh, this is no problem. This is normal human action, normal process. Even it's certainly there are problems that come up where you feel compassion because you feel the person is truly in a bind. So when you have very serious things, you have, I don't know, you have terminal illnesses, you have very sick children, you have damage being done in people's relationships or their ability to make a living or compromise. There are bad things that happen that will hit your humanity. But mostly, no. Mostly that's not what's happening. Mostly the problems are you're in there in an effort to join with somebody and solve problems and try to figure things out for the better. Not a problem, okay? Similar to an engineer, like I look at computer problems, and I'm like, I'm ready to take this thing and throw it out the window, okay? I want to call up whoever built it and scream. That's how I am. Whereas some of these computer people are like, what's the problem? It's kind of interesting. Let's see what happens here on. Okay? So human beings are remarkably different in terms of how their personalities are built, and these folks are not built the way most parents are built, and so it's no surprise. I've had other people, of course, hear about what it is that I do, and they're like, oh, gosh, I wish I did that. Oh, I would love to do psychology, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so huge individual variation, and I think that you are correct, Philip, that what has happened here is that this game and the fascination with it is an effective personality test, and it's telling us that these are sort of low oxytocin, not heavy attachment, not heavy empathy animals, and they're kind of they're introverted, and they're kind of, that's who they are. So no worries. Got it. Thank you. Thanks for calling. Good
Thanks
question.
so much, Doctor. Thank you, Nate. Yep.
You bet.
All right, Philip. Thank you very much for the phone call. Really great question.
Yeah.
All right. Our next caller, Jennifer, welcome to the program. Thanks for calling.
Thank you. I'm so excited to have a chance to talk with you both.
Very good. All right. Well, tell us this. Well, first of all, where are you from, Jennifer?
I live in the Los Angeles area.
All right. Very good. All right. Well, tell us the story. What's going on, and what question do we have?
Okay. Well, I have to say I love your program. I just started listening to it on whim. I'm just a podcast junkie, and now I've devoured every episode and just have been so surprised at how much sort of comfort it's brought me in dealing with all of my day-to-day situations. It gives a clarity that things don't seem so random, and I feel like I can be more at choice. with decisions in my life and relationships, and it's just fabulous. So I just want to thank you first off.
Oh, good. All pleasure.
Yeah. So I'm actually in a new stage of my life after divorcing my ex-husband, and your podcast has been wonderful for really helping me understand why I married him. I married an extremely conscientious, fantastic man. I married him for all these great genetic reasons, and it also helped me understand why I made a really good decision in not staying married with him, because we just weren't a match in ways that really fulfilled me. So, but that's not what I'm calling about right now. So I'm in this new era of dating, and so what I'm curious to learn from you is, do you have any advice on how to date when someone is not looking for a pair bond? Young children at home, a full career, I'm financially stable, and quite frankly, I don't want to bring a partner into my kid's life. I don't want to bring any attention away from them. They're my focus. So I've got a 50-50 time split with my ex-husband, so I have free time to socialize, but I kind of want to keep it more superficial. And I'll tell you, I've had fun dating in this new era of my life, but what I find, what's really fun about it is I no longer have the checklist that I used to see if someone would be a suitable mate and a suitable parent for future children. So now I'm just dating for fun, which really is great. It opens me up to dating people that I otherwise would have ruled out for various reasons. But what I find happening is I can't sustain those relationships because, my genes take over, and I start worrying about status, and I start worrying about, they can be attractive on certain levels. And I don't know, I'm kind of talking in circles. I wonder if maybe I should talk about.
I think we're getting it clear. Go ahead.
Okay. Like, I think about the last relationship that I had, and this was someone just, a really solid guy, and, probably his level of attractiveness would have been considered beneath mine. So as a result, he was crazy about me, and that was fabulous, and we had a lot of fun together, but I found that it was unsustainable because just over time it kind of chipped away at me. And I thought about calling the show during that relationship, like, is there anything I can do to beat my genes in a situation like that, knowing that I'm not looking for a pair bond? How can I continue to enjoy this relationship knowing that I don't want to take it further? Do you have any advice sort of around that? I know it's not usually what you're coaching people. You're kind of coaching people to meet their mate and have that be successful for as long as it can be successful. But
yeah, I think you're trying to meet your mate anyway. That's the deal. And so what you're doing here is, in other words, you can see that that's where the programming is.
Exactly.
Yes. And what you're actually doing here is you're doing something very interesting. You have the luxury now that you're no longer on the clock. And we're no longer, staring at birthdays, trying to figure out if we're going to have children, trying to figure out if this, you are a peek into the 22nd century. So there's not a lot of people that basically have your ex is not some crazy stalking has attorney faxing your attorney, hauling you to court, financial, SOB. No, everything. Like we probably have kids that everything's fine, everybody's healthy, everybody's got nice little personalities, everybody's doing fine in school, everybody plays well with others. It's like, oh, okay. All right, we've got like all these problems solved, okay? So now what you get to do is to figure out how to, quote, enjoy yourself, because we're not putting out fires and trying to deal with deficiencies.
Exactly.
So that's where you are. So that means that what you're really doing at this point, you are doing where human nature is headed and where it's been aiming for, forever. but you're now living there. And so now what you get to do is this is what I call parametric research. So you get to fiddle around with a lot of parameters, and you have an intuition about this is. Let me give this broad explanation here.
Okay.
You have an intuition about the parameters that it would take with respect to looks, brains, personality, and circumstantial situations for you to be really happy with somebody. Okay? You have an intuition about it, but you are not sure of that intuition. And the reason is that your who you are is a set of neural circuits. The preferences that you have not really been shaped by experience. They are actually they're already innate to you. And what happens is that your job is to discover them. Okay, so there's Harry Brown uses a word that I think is good. It's a facsimile for what I would call personality, but it's got an interesting ring to it. He just says, this is your identity. This is who it is that you are, and who you are has certain characteristics. And what's going to happen is our job is to discover what those characteristics are. Now, through your interactions with the world, you might find out that you like tall, dark, and handsome, or you may like average height, really strong as an ox, and blonde. You know what I'm saying? You may like guys that are athletic and like to ski and see how fast they can get down the mountain. Or you may like guys that actually like to go to the opera and discuss, what happened there. Right? So it turns out that there's a whole set of variables out there that your nervous system does not know what the optimal combination is for you. All it can do is it can estimate it. Okay? And it estimates it when you meet new people and get a look at those parameters and then watch what happens to you inside you. Okay? This is exactly like tasting food at a smorgasbord. Like you can suspect what it is that you think that's going to taste like, and it looks similar to something that you tasted a month ago at the same smorgasbord, but you can tell it's a little bit different. So the question is, I liked it like at about a 7 last time, but this time I'm not sure. Okay? So if I taste it, it could be a 6, but it might be a 10. You know what I mean? I don't know what it's going to be. And so what you should have inside your brain does have this. It has it has what we're going to call openness to experience. And what that openness is the brain is running a cost-benefit analysis on the amount of time and energy that it should utilize in order to explore these parameters.
Okay.
So every animal, for example, would have a roaming range that would be basically ideal for that species.
If
you're a little bigger,
if
you're a little bigger and stronger animal, you're probably going to have a little wider roaming range. You see what I'm saying? That may very, very well be possible. And so in your case, effectively, you're a bigger, stronger animal. In other words, you've got your reproducing done that you probably want to do in all probability. And you've got finances set. You are not like upset at your job and want to leave it, blah, blah, blah.
No, got a great career.
Right. Yep. So we've got everything great. So now what we get to do is we get to fiddle with the romantic side of the system and try to figure out what are the optimal combination of parameters.
Well, do you mind if I interrupt you just for a second?
Sure.
Because I wonder if you missed kind of the piece of the equation that I specifically don't want a deep pair bond connection because my kids are so young. I don't want to bring a man into their world. So I'm like intentionally trying to keep things light and like I sort of want to avoid meeting Mr. Right because I feel like that'll be too big of a distraction.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Possible. Okay, I'm hearing you, and I think that's sort of an if you if you were to look at that and we were to transport this problem back into the Stone Age environment, what you're suggesting makes no sense.
Exactly.
In other words, if you got 2 or 3 little kids, whatever it is, your brain should be saying, where can I get the most outstanding protection and provision that I can get?
And I find myself battling that for myself. I feel that sort of internal drive, and I'm fighting against it because I don't want that right now.
Yeah, but the fact that you don't want it is curious. I'm not saying, I'm not trying to talk you into it. I'm just saying that we are observing that the way your nervous system appears to be designed would be ideal for the Stone Age environment, telling you to find it, okay? And it's telling you because you've got a leisure in the process, because we're not under the gun, because we don't have screaming little frightened children. Because we don't have that situation, you are at your leisure to actually do a very open-ended parametric investigation of yourself. Now, so that's what you're doing. So you're saying, okay, well, listen, what I want to do, in principle, what you would want to do is you would, I believe, let me try to get this straight. You've got some set of neural circuits for interactions that take place between 2 adult partners that cause human happiness to fire. Effectively, any relationship where there's any chemistry at all, this thing, I would call this, it's like an instrument. Think of it as a piano.
Sure.
And if you have think of a little 14 note piano, little tiny midget piano. Okay.
Okay.
On that piano, that's some guy that meets a couple of criteria in an interesting way. He's just interesting enough, and your nervous system can experience certain things as a result. And if you we play those tunes, and you get a certain experience out of it. Not bad. Okay.
Yeah.
Then we get somebody that can hit other notes. Okay. I believe the most exquisite experience possible for human beings is to meet somebody who has the widest possible range for you in terms of what can hit the biggest happiness. That's going to be the handsomest, most athletic, most suave, funniest, emotionally stable and interesting, loving, tough, successful, socially attractive, and wanted and admired human being that you could ever qualify for.
Yeah.
Okay? That if you qualified for them and they qualified for you, that is the most intense, interesting, sustainable, positive mood of happiness input that is possible for you in the romantic arena. Now, so that's what you're aiming for, whether you want to aim for it or not.
Yeah.
Now, what you may be saying is, look, you can almost hear the footsteps of the Stone Age brain saying, well, gee, if a guy's pretty darn good, take the protection and provision, and, okay then. And part of you is saying, no, I don't. It's going to be a mess. I've got kids. I'm not so sure about that. And really what I would like is to explore these parameters. And because within those parameters, by exploring these parameters more completely with a variety of potential suitors, that what you get to do is you get to discover things about yourself. You start discovering how are you happier with the guy that likes to race down the mountain and ski and beat everybody, or are you happier with the guy at the opera? Okay? It's like it's hard to know because there are different kinds of music inside the female nervous system. I had a young lady tell me that she was dating a wrong side of the track kind of a young man. and they were in a little bit of a challenging situation socially. It was a little rough on some Friday or Saturday night somewhere with, the low riding Chevys and God knows what else was going on. Okay? And this guy wasn't a big guy. And he looked at her and he said, "Get in the car." Okay? Yelled at her, like, "Get in the car." And she said she got in the car and she was all turned on.
I'm sure.
Okay? So, like, what did we see there? Okay, we saw an esteem signal that said to her in the crudest, most absolutely believable fashion that you are really sexually important to me, okay? And I don't want anybody else coming. You are so sexually attractive, this is dangerous, okay? And I don't want to have to get in a knockdown, drag-out thing for my life. Okay, and that's that. So you are going to. I'm telling you what to do.
Yeah.
This is strangely, very exciting moment for her. Now,
Sure.
So this is, you would not, until you've experienced it, you wouldn't know that you really liked somebody that wanted you and found you that important that badly. Okay, so as you had a situation where no doubt you were pursued with heat by your ex-husband, enough so that you got married and all that. But this other guy that you met recently that was wacko about you, where the differential was greater, at least subjectively on his part, you got to feel what it felt like to have somebody falling all over themselves. And it was an interesting music. Okay? So this is kind of what it is that you're up to. Now, so I would say that in answer to your real question is, gee, how can I trick my brain into not ruling these people out and getting rid of them? And the answer is you can't trick your brain. There's no way, okay? Your brain has an agenda, and that agenda is the best interest of your children. And the best interest of your children are to have the coolest, most phenomenal stepdad you can find.
But isn't your podcast called Beat Your Genes?
Yeah. Oh, good luck. Sometimes you can beat it, and sometimes you can't. So, yeah, I think that's what your beating your genes would be to beating your genes would be to recognize that as you are actually that you're not dependent upon these romances to forever. And that you want to keep things in a situation. You want to actually keep yourself in a position of power with respect to the relationship between any new male and your children. You want to keep those boundaries up for a long time, okay?
Yes.
Definitely. Until the point where, as I tell people, you don't get married, you discover if you are.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah.
That's it. You just keep the barriers up between you and your children, and you enjoy yourself. And when you rule people out, when your Stone Age brain rules them out, then the fun's over.
Yeah.
And we're on to the new piano. Okay?
Yeah, and you really aren't at say about that. Just suddenly it's just not there anymore.
This is a fascinating thing. That this is the most, I am sure, the most complicated cost-benefit analysis that's done by any mind in the known universe. Is romantic cost-benefit analysis in humans.
Yeah.
Okay? There is more considerations about gene survival going on with that consideration than anything else. And, when it's good, you know it, and when it's not good, you know it. And you can take a left brain analysis of this thing down to, 3 decimal places, and it's not as good as the right brain.
Yeah.
The right brain sniffs it all over the place and tells you what to do. Okay?
Yeah.
So that's how it works, and we don't have any choice about that.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much. Such a treat to talk with you. I really appreciate it.
A great pleasure, Jennifer. Thanks for calling.